Upcoming changes to social media. Keystone Pipeline Union speaks out and at prep for Trump impeachment trial number 2. These stories and more in your Not So News update. Starting us off from CNN.com, we have that Twitter banned Gateway pundit and founder Jim Hoft. In their article, they state Twitter civic integrity policy states you may not use Twitter services for the purpose of manipulating or interfering in elections or other civic processes. Gateway Pundit has been promoting falsehoods about the 2020 presidential election both on Twitter and directly on its website, alleging voter fraud and voter irregularity. On Biden's inauguration day, the website's top headline falsely claimed the election had been stolen from Trump. Hoff shared a post about his ban on Gateway Pundit website Saturday evening. He pointed to an ongoing investigation of the Detroit TCF Center continuing to push a false narrative of late-night deliveries of tens of thousands of it. We have much more on this incident to report on in the upcoming days, Saul said. He shared a screenshot from his Twitter account, which before it got banned, the tweet reached just an FYI that fake news media and other challenged our TCF Center video report on Friday. That was a bad mood. We have much more coming. Recently this week, also, Cassandra Fairbanks, who's a reporter, I believe, also for Gateway Pundit, got banned on Twitter, or I think she was suspended for about a day for sharing a video from the TCF Center. I believe her post didn't even have anything incriminating in it. All it was is literally just boxes being taken off of trucks and led into the center, not necessarily illegal actions or anything. But what we see is a coordinated attack on this kind of stories. Something you often see with conspiracy theories and those kinds of like misinformation campaigns is normally some type of an aspect of truth to it. And there's two reactions to it. What we see social media types doing is just taking the conversation off completely, and they're banning, suspending. The other response is to allow the information out there and allow people to respond. The unfortunate consequence of taking the information off is we don't get an answer for these things. Why were boxes taken out of trucks into the TCF Center? I think it's a reasonable question, and if you don't want people claiming fraud or stolen election or anything, you have to deal with the evidence that's out there. I'm not saying this is necessarily evidence for stolen election or anything like that, but when you take the questions away, it seems and gives the impression that there's something to hide. Next from Engadget, we have Senate Democrats introduce a bill to limit Section 230. Section 230 is the protections that allow companies to take things like hateful language, pornography, etc. off their websites or comment sections. This doesn't apply to something like a news agents organization that is acting as a publisher. From taking stuff out that's like misinformation, or like it doesn't necessarily protect the poster from like libel and those kinds of lawsuits. It protects whoever's hosting like the website from comment sections. So Engadget gives the following. Senators Mark Warner, Mazie Hirono, and Amy Klobuchar said in a joint statement that the bill would make the likes of Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube more liable for enabling cyber stalking, targeted harassment, and discrimination. According to protocol, staffers for the three senators consulted with civil rights groups and experts in online harm as they drafted the bill. If the act became law, platforms wouldn't be able to claim Section 230 liability for ads or other paid content. Many of them have been limiting political ads to varying degrees. The provision would not shield companies from complying with court orders or alleged violations of civil rights, antitrust, cyberstalking, human rights laws at state and federal law level. Additionally, the bill makes it clear that Section 230 would not protect platforms from civil actions stemming from wrongful deaths. I think that last part's a little interesting. It's really making people responsible for how someone reacts to their speech, which I think is a very scary protocol to say. I know, like, in response to Trump's January 6th speech language that led to the Capitol riots, you've seen a lot of Republicans starting that, similar language was used by the Democrats across the aisle. Notably, there was the individual who shot up a Republican softball game, who was a supporter of Bernie Sanders, after Bernie Sanders said that the Republicans were trying to kill everyone by not giving health care. I don't think Bernie Sanders should be held liable for that conduct. In a similar way, I think if there's a comment that's left on a YouTube video or Facebook, Twitter, etc., that's not on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, whoever, it's on whoever the commenter is. Um, and I think that's a scary protection, especially, or the scary part about this kind of thing. I know they specifically said for ads and paid content. I'm scared if it goes, beyond that, or, once you get to a company so large, how much, automated software is there that makes it so there's not a person behind the platform that's approving it manually. A lot of sites, I know, I believe Google Ads makes it so that you just upload a video and you pay your you put credit card information in, and you're able to upload your ads to get sponsored views and everything. I'm not sure if Facebook, Twitter, YouTube has something like this. I believe YouTube doesn't. I'm not sure about Facebook and Twitter. But it's I find it very concerning that the people that they addressed with this was specifically civil rights groups and experts in online harm, and they didn't get input from the tech platforms for how hard it is to implement these new standards. How much would it cost a company to have to redo their entire profit mechanism, because that's really what they're targeting here. I'm not saying that this is necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying that it's a slippery slope, and we gotta be slow about these types of changes. Next, a recent change by Facebook. Facebook's new privacy pop-up shows the company just doesn't get it. The company is trying to convince you to let it track what you do online without ever having to admit that it tracks what you do online. A bit wordy, but essentially this is just a battle between Facebook and Apple. Apple has a policy that if you're going to require someone to give their data online, it needs to be made pretty clear within the app. Facebook essentially just had a new like click and use kind of thing, yeah, essentially that's the story. It's really just a interesting option. I think everyone knows now that Facebook understands that the people using the application aren't the product. They're the ones receiving ads and everything, and then selling off their data. And it's your data that's the product of Facebook. They just have created a product that allows you to get something out of doing it. So interesting to see what goes in this, if there's any legal battles. Essentially, from the article they have, to that end, the company is now testing a pop-up that will appear before Apple's request to track notification appears. The pop-up asks users to allow Facebook to use your app and website activity, and then it explains two benefits, which is get ads that are personalized, support businesses that rely on ads to reach consumer. There's a problem, however. Nowhere does Facebook pop-up use the word tracking. That might seem like a small criticism, but it's actually a big deal. I'm sure that is entirely intentional on Facebook's part. It most definitely does want its users thinking about the fact that it tracks them. Still, it's a big mistake and shows Facebook just doesn't get it. They're saying Facebook doesn't get it. I think everyone using Facebook knows by now what's going on with the company, and really all big tech companies have really been criticized for what we've always known, is that you're just receiving ads based on this data. Next, a recent interview was done here from HBO, posted on Axios, with the AFL-CIO, President Richard Trumka, who was representing the Keystone XL pipeline, and showed how it hurt union jobs. I think something notable is a lot of unions, specifically unions in these markets, supported Biden. And now they're saying that like he was able to just take away those jobs with a single signature. So a couple of points from here. First, the Laborers International Union in North America said the Keystone decision will cost 1,000 existing union jobs and 10,000 projected construction jobs. The Laborers International was right, and Trunka. Next, they often talk about how jobs don't necessarily stay in the area. So they were saying that the jobs for oil and gas fracking, etc., would be replaced by green jobs. But as he says here, if you destroy 100 jobs in Greene County, Pennsylvania, where I grew up, and you create 100 jobs in California, it doesn't do those 100 families much good. if you're looking at a pipeline and you're saying we're going to put it down now, what are you going to do to create the same good paying jobs in that area? So the main thing he's getting at here is often with green energy or whatever new jobs that are being proposed, they're not in the same area that we're taking the jobs away from. We're doing a transfer of jobs from, Michigan, Pennsylvania, wherever that type of construction fracking is going on, and moving it to the tech centers of New York, California, DC, maybe even like Houston and Chicago, and Detroit. But we're not really giving back to those small towns that we're stealing the jobs from. In a way, this is a clear transfer of wealth from poor America to the more built up America. His final line goes into the comment of, the quote unquote learn to code, which was actually brought up during this. When they laid off the mines back in Pennsylvania, so they told us they were going to train us to be computer programmers. And I said, where are the computer programming jobs at? They're in Oklahoma, and they're in Vegas, and they're here. And I said, so in other words, what we're going to be is unemployed miners and unemployed computer programmers as well. I think what doesn't get understood quite enough in this country, particularly in DC politics, is that culture is very, very important to people who live there. What he's getting at here is you can't just expect people to get up and leave their areas to get new jobs. You can't expect someone from Pennsylvania to move to DC to get a computer programming job, especially because this is probably before they're even trained to be a computer programmer. They probably have no software engineering experience. All they probably have is some 6-week course on how to code, which in their defense, that's really all you need to do most programming jobs. But that's not really what's being asked for by most companies. Finally, it's the new week, which means we get to prep for Trump's impeachment. It starts off today, and CNN Politics has Trump's second impeachment trial set to kick off this week amid questions about what it will look like. I've been saying there's really 3 questions that need to be answered with the Trump trial, and so far all 3 of them seem to, or at least 2 of them seem very clearly in Trump's favor. The first is, does the Constitution allow for the impeachment of a former president, specifically once they've been unelected? The second is, if he's being tried, does the Chief Justice need to preside over that trial? And then the third question is, was Trump's language considered a high crime or misdemeanor? The first question there was a vote on. I think CNN even brings it up as the GOP senator preview, which was the 55-45 vote, started by Rand Paul last week. It was pretty much a party line vote with 5 Republicans joining the Democrats. But we know that 17 senators or 17 Republicans need to join the Democrats on the vote. But this really shows us that kind of what we're expecting, that the impeachment will fall in not convicting Trump. However, I think we kind of want to look at least the third question. To be completely honest, the Chief Justice question doesn't really interest me too much. However, I do think it's a question that really hasn't been asked much. Normally, there's a question that's really been skipped in this is, are we trying Trump as president or not? If we're trying him as president, then it requires the Chief Justice. If we're not trying him as president, then he can't be tried under, as a private citizen, which was what Rand Paul was getting at. But the third question was Trump's speech illegal? And I'm actually not going to go into particular case law or anything like that, just because I'm not familiar with First Amendment case law or anything like that. However, I want to get at a question that I haven't seen enough asked, and I've been asking it a lot and not getting responses, is, was Trump's speech a high crime or misdemeanor? I believe the federal government and the the DOJ and the DC prosecutors have told us no, it was not a high crime or misdemeanor. Why do I say that? Because Trump is right now a private citizen and has not been convicted or arrested. If they did consider it a high crime or misdemeanor, then he would be in, handcuffs right now. This really implies what we've been saying all along, that this is just political theater, and I don't know what to say. it doesn't seem like the Democrats are helping themselves with this. Something that was put up in the CNN article is that they are expecting a speedy trial, unlike the last one, which took 3 weeks. They're expecting this to be no more than 2, and I've heard some say that it will just be 1 week for this trial. So we might have an official answer by Friday, but I am thinking that it's very, very likely that Trump will not be convicted. And this is your February 8th Not So News update. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and have a good one.